Let me ask you something. How many of your beliefs, your core values, the things you would fight for, are actually truly yours? Today, we're tearing into the provocative ideas from the book Chains of Allegiance. And its central claim? That the freedom we think we have, well, it might just be the most convincing illusion of all.
We love to think of ourselves as independent, as the captains of our own ships, making our own choices. And look, that's a nice thought. The book even calls it a comforting fiction, something we might even need to believe to get through the day. But if you start to peel back the layers of that story we tell ourselves, something else starts to show. Something a lot more unsettling. A fundamental truth about what it means to be human.
And here it is, the core argument of the whole book. We are, by our very nature, hardwired to follow, to be led, to be, as the book puts it, sculpted. And the real kicker? It's our own intelligence, our consciousness, that makes us so vulnerable to the pull of a good story and a strong leader. So that brings us to this really chilling question. Is it possible we're just not built for total freedom? That we actually crave these larger systems, these bigger stories, just to shield us from the chaos of it all? That's the big question we're going to tackle. So here's our game plan. We're going to start with why we have this deep-seated need to follow. Then we'll look at how leaders and systems actually shape us. After that, we'll break down the good, the bad, and the ugly of both religion and politics. And finally, we'll see how all of this is changing in our crazy digital world. Okay, first up, the innate craving. Look, before we can understand how these outside forces control us, we have to get a handle on the empty spaces inside of us that they're so perfectly designed to fill. Deep down, right at our core, we humans have this nagging fear, this dread of meaninglessness. Think about it. We're on this rock, flying through a vast, silent universe, with a life that's guaranteed to end. Our minds just can't stand that. We are desperate for a reason, a purpose, some sign that any of this actually matters. And right into that empty space step the two great operating systems for human society. On one hand, you've got religion. It offers this epic, divine story, the promise of cosmic justice, and of course the comfort of an afterlife. Then you've got politics, offering a more down-to-earth deal, order, stability, and the promise of a better future for our kids. Both are making this same fundamental bargain. Give us a piece of your freedom, and we'll give you security and meaning in return. So, if we're all craving this direction, how exactly does it get provided? That brings us to our second section, the art of sculpting. It's about how our beliefs and behaviors are shaped. And it's not always a hammer. Sometimes it's more like a gentle whisper. It's a whole spectrum, really, from a friendly suggestion to an iron fist. A lot of this sculpting is incredibly subtle. Take something called nudge theory. It's not about forcing you to do anything. It's about making one choice slightly easier than another. The classic example is organ donation. When the form changes from check here to opt in to check here to opt out, donation rates go through the roof. Same choice, but we're gently nudged toward a specific outcome. That's soft power. Now, the book points to the MAGA movement as a pretty clear modern example of these techniques at work. And just looking at it through this lens, you can see the classic tools. A single charismatic leader who embodies the movement's hopes. A very simple us versus them story. A heavy reliance on emotional slogans, not rational arguments. A separate media world to control the information. And of course, these big collective rituals, the rallies, that build an incredibly strong sense of belonging. These are tools that have been used for centuries. All right, let's zoom in on the first great sculptor, religion. And as the book lays out, its impact is complicated. There's a good side, a bad side, and a downright ugly side. On the good side, religion has been a powerful, benevolent force. It's given us shared moral codes to build entire civilizations on. It's created powerful communities and inspired huge humanitarian efforts around the globe. And you can't forget that it's been the engine for massive social change, like the American Civil Rights Movement, which was so deeply rooted in the church. But here's the flip side. That same powerful belief system can become a set of shackles. Dogma can make people resist new knowledge, like with Galileo and the church. And that absolute certainty that you have the one true answer, well, that can lead to some of the most violent divisions in history, from the Crusades all the way to sectarian conflicts we see today. And then there's the ugly, the absolute terrifying extreme,
The book uses Jonestown as the ultimate cautionary tale. It's what happens when that human need for community and meaning gets twisted into total psychological slavery, ending in absolute horror. It is a brutal reminder of what happens when these chains of allegiance become absolute.
Next up is the other great sculptor, politics. And just like religion, it has a dual nature. It has the power to build us up and the power to tear us all down. At its absolute best, politics is the architect of human progress. It gives us law and order, it builds the roads, the bridges, the power grids we all depend on. It provides essential things like public education and healthcare that have literally changed the course of human history. It's the tool we use to build a better society together.
But man, that machine can get heavy. It's almost always vulnerable to corruption, people using public power for their own private gain. It gets tangled up in so much bureaucratic red tape that it just grinds to a halt. And it creates the bitter divisions and polarization that can paralyze an entire country.
And the ugly side of politics? It's totalitarianism. Think of Nazi Germany or the Stalinist Soviet Union. This is the ultimate nightmare, where the state doesn't just want your obedience, it wants to own your thoughts. And it enforces that ownership with nonstop propaganda, total surveillance, and pure brutal force. And all of this brings us to right now, to our final section, our evolving digital chains. Because those ancient forces of religion and politics, they're not gone, but they've been joined by some powerful new players in this new digital age. The biggest new force is what the book calls algorithmic governance. This is where massive amounts of data are used to shape your reality, to nudge your behavior in ways you don't even notice. That YouTube algorithm that slowly pulls you down a rabbit hole, that curated news feed on social media that decides what stories you see and which ones you don't. These are the new chains. They're invisible, they're personalized, and they are incredibly powerful. So you end up with this really stark comparison. The old sculptors were priests and kings and bureaucrats. The new ones? They're algorithms, they're social media platforms, and in some places, they're even social credit systems that literally score your every move. The source of authority is shifting. So what does all this mean for you and me? It means the pressure on us as individuals is greater than it has ever been. Real freedom isn't something you're just given. It's something you have to constantly fight for. It means you have to work to think critically, to actually see these invisible chains, and then use your own conscience to decide which ones are worth wearing. And that leads to the book's really powerful final thought. Freedom isn't about having no chains at all. In a complex society, that's just not possible. True freedom is about the struggle. It's about understanding which chains are helping you and which ones are trapping you, and then making a conscious choice about how you're going to live with them. So the final question the book leaves us with is a deeply personal one. How will you wear yours?